The views and opinions expressed on this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the network, producers, advertisers, or hosts, and belong solely to those who make them. Truth Frequency is a non-biased and non-partisan platform committed to presenting all aspects of the truth and allowing you, the listener, to decide for yourself.
31 seconds, and we're gone for auto sequence start.
This is David Icke, and you're tapped into the Truth Frequency with Chris and Cherie.
It's called being in the zone. It's called, being lucky. It's called having everything go your way.
When you deal with computers, you deal with ones and zeros. And the only way that you can make a computer more powerful is to expand the consciousness of the computer.
Well, it's something bigger than ourselves, and that's got to be said.
That has to do with the self-image that people have.
You just have your ego being swept aside, or being kind of stomped on, or being swatted like a fly.
It really is and truly happening at a societal level.
It is being able to take what feels like ordinary human energy and mastering extraordinary power, even with a single person in a society with this kind of power. Call it the X factor.
And guess what, guys? Here we are.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, once again, this June 1st, 2012. I'm your host, Chris Geo. Of course, my lovely chipmunk twin flame and co-host Cherie is joining us.
What's up, guys?
And you are tapped into the Truth Frequency. We have a great show for you today in the first hour. We are proud to welcome back one of our favorite guests, somebody we haven't had on in quite some time. Jim Marrs will be joining us. We'll discuss Bilderberg and a few other things with Jim, maybe get into the zombie attacks that we've seen lately, and we've been doing some research on that. We'll break that in the third hour. Some viruses and other biological weapons that they have created to basically turn people into zombies. I mean, this is not science fiction. This is now science fact. And it really just blows my mind. Do we have to go get shotguns? Do we have to prepare for a zombie apocalypse? I don't know, but we've had multiple zombie attacks in the past 2 weeks. Not just one. That's what I said. I said I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to wait. And if there's another one, then I will start to research it. Not only was there another one, there were several of them. A lot of crazy things going on in the world. But we'll get into that in the third hour. In the second hour, Shep of the IntelHub will be joining us for a live update from Bilderberg. And we'll find out what type of pudding will be served this year. Will it be vanilla or chocolate? That is the big question. We know there's not going to be any lobster or steak because these old bastards are so old that all they can do is sit around and eat pudding. So that will be...
Swiss Miss has gotten a huge order in the past couple of days to go directly to where Bilderberg is meeting at, what was it, the Marriott? I forget the name. I'm pulling it up right now, but I'll bet Swiss Miss got a call from him saying, we need pudding.
We need pudding. But how can you have your pudding if you don't eat your meat? That's the big question right there. Henry Kissinger, we'd like to know, how can you have your pudding if you can't eat your meat? The chipmunk is laughing over here. Our wedding rings were sent, finally. We've been waiting for them for a few months. So we do have those now. They were custom made for us. And Eric Begay created them for us. I'll pull up his website and we'll plug him because he did a really good job on them, and he gave us a good deal too. They're Native American wedding rings. So we still have that on the agenda as well. The network, I am so happy, is almost complete. The website is looking awesome, and it will be launched very shortly. Just putting on some final touches, but I got all the functions working finally. I'm so happy. Anyways, we'll be right back with Jim Marrs. I don't think the man needs an introduction, but we'll give him one right on the other side.
Let me just check all your papers. A routine terror sweep here. I'm Officer Jack Boot. I've got a uniform. Bow down to that. Shiny medallions, fancy hat. I've got a uniform. You little piggy. Bow down to that. Let me hear you squeal. Shiny medallions. Fancy hat. Bend him over. Come on, little piggy. I've got a uniform. You understand me, boy? Bow down to that. Now I'll kill everybody. Shiny medallions. The government's king. Fancy hat. Yeah, I tell you what you do. I've got a uniform. Yeah, on the ground. Bow down to that. We don't learn you good now. Shiny medallions. That ain't good enough, boy. Fancy hat. Lick my boot. Got the power. I'm a cop. I'm a cop. I'm a cop. Got the power. Oh, yeah. Got the power. I'm a cop. I'm a cop. Got the power. I'll do what I want. I'll do what I want.
Yes, sir, boss man. Can I please worship the government better?
That's a vote of non-confidence, you civilian trash. Talking bad about the government, that's Al-Qaeda talk. Civilian scum, you better pray to me and you better lick my boots. I'm an officer and you're a lowly civilian. You wipe that smile off your face right now. I'll tase you and I'll set you up and I'll send you to prison. You pieces of trash, you do what I say. Maybe I'll put duct tape on your mouth, your eyes, arms, and legs and throw you in the river. Talk about how you committed suicide. I've got a uniform. Bow down to that. You little piggy. Shiny medallions, fancy hat. You son of a bitch. Give me my taser. Bow down to that. I'll show you who the boss is. I'll show you who the winner is. I'm going to tase you right now. I'll show you I'm bigger than you and I'm fatter than you. I own you, lady. I'm a cop. Got the power. Oh, yeah. Got the power. I'm a cop. Got the power. I'll do what I want. I'll do what I want. Got the power. I'm a cop. Got the power.
Allà baix dins els canals, en el peu de Santanya, pareix que sent picarols, suau si es mou sa manada.
A View from Mars, JimMars.com is the website. This man needs no introduction on the show. He is the author of The Alien Agenda, The $1 million, trillion conspiracy, and many, many more. I hope this evening we can get into Bilderberg a little bit. We do have Shep of the IntelHub live on location at the Bilderberg meeting. He'll be joining us in the second hour. But for right now, for the next full hour, ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome back Mr. Jim Mars. Jim, welcome back to the show.
Hey, it's good to be with you.
Oh, it's good to have
Hello.
you. Yes, it's good to.
Am I there? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm hearing some feedback.
Oh, are you? Let me see if I can make a few adjustments here on this end. I do apologize about that. All right. Is that better?
Oh, yeah, much better.
Excellent. Well, we really appreciate you coming back to the show, and I know that you were working on a new book here in the last few months. Do you want to tell people a little bit about that, or is that still top secret?
Well, I hate to blow the big surprise, and then everybody say, "Oh, I already know that." They won't buy my book. Which,
Okay.
That's okay. But I'll give you a little teaser. The new book is Our Occulted History. And I'm quick to point out that this book is not about vampires, werewolves, zombies, or devil worshippers. I use the term occulted in the astronomical sense, meaning, that something is masked or hidden. When the moon eclipses the sun, that's called an occultation. So our occulted history simply refers to the history that has been kept hidden.
Yes. Yes, people need to remember that.
I think you get the idea.
Oh, yes. People need to remember that it's a cult. Like Jordan Maxwell says, it's a cult because it's hidden, because they don't want you to know about it. But it's funny that you mentioned zombies because...
And, it may be that's why occult has gotten such a bad connotation. It may be that's been put on us so that nobody wants to really think about the occult or the hidden, what's being kept from us.
Well, right. Nobody wants to feel alienated by their peers, and that's a good way to make people feel alienated.
That's right.
So
yes, definitely. It's funny you mentioned zombies, though, because I do have to ask you this. We had that cannibal attack in the South
Miami?
Yeah, in Miami, yes, sir.
Is this the beginning of the zombie apocalypse?
It could very well be. We've had like 3 or 4 cases ever since.
Yeah, I saw another story here just today or yesterday where some other idiot attacked somebody and was eating his eyeballs or something. I mean, I don't know. Hey, let me throw the question back to you. Is this, does art imitate life or life imitate art? Does everybody get fascinated with zombies and then all of a sudden, some really screwed up people on drugs or mentally or whatever start eating people, or do people start eating people and then the zombie fad starts? It's a good question.
Well, if you ask somebody like David Icke, he would say that we create our own reality, and so the consciousness of the zombies, of the possibility of zombies, could have very well brought this into it. But I think more than likely it's some type of bioweapon that they're experimenting with. There was an article out of National Geographic in 2010 where a doctor from the University of Miami was talking about how they've created a zombie virus.
Yeah.
Yes, so it could very well be.
What's really scary is that if you go back and study about the first atomic bomb, the Manhattan Project, when they set off the first atomic bomb at Alamogordo in 1945, more than half the scientists working on the Manhattan Project sincerely believed that once you started a nuclear chain reaction, you wouldn't be able to stop it, and it would just continue to spread, and it would ignite the atmosphere, and it would incinerate the Earth. But they set it off anyway.
Right, exactly.
Oh, glad that didn't pan out.
I guess they figured, well, even if that happens, then I guess we don't have to worry about it because nobody will be here to realize our mistake.
There won't be any investigation. No, but my point is that if they can do something, they will.
Oh, absolutely.
So, it's comforting to think that, well, the government has all these agencies and they're all monitoring all this stuff, and they'll make sure that a zombie-creating virus doesn't get loose in the public. Excuse me, everything they've ever done has screwed up, okay? Everything, one way or another, to a greater or lesser extent. So if they can do something, they'll do it. And if it can go wrong, it will.
Absolutely. And, well, going back to your new book, the Bilderberg Group doesn't seem to be able to stay a cult anymore. Have you noticed that?
No, that's true. That's because there's been too many people on their case. In fact, I suspect that's why they came back to Chantilly, Virginia this week to meet in the United States, because here they can get plenty of armed guards and security people and keep everybody out and try to maintain their anonymity. In Switzerland last year, even Swiss politicians were showing up, banging on the door saying, "Hey, what are you guys doing in there?" And they say, "Oh, nothing, only about 150 of the top corporate leaders and royalty of the world meeting. Nothing going on in here."
Except pudding eating. We're all eating pudding because we can't eat anything else.
Well, hey, guys, think about this. What kind of uproar do you think there would be in our media if the owners of the National Football League, for example, all met in a hotel under armed guard, wouldn't let anybody in, and stayed in there for almost a week, and then came out and wouldn't tell anybody what they talked about? Wouldn't there be cries of restraint of trade, collusion, conspiracy? What are you guys doing? They'd raise Cain about that, wouldn't they?
Oh, exactly.
Seeing as how
yeah,
it's
but no, nothing on Bilderbergers. Why, they're just the movers and shakers of the world meeting, and we don't have any input. We can't even hear what they're talking about. And yet, the bald-faced fact is that decisions made at Bilderberg, 9 times out of 10 become national policy, not only in the United States, but in many other countries. So I think it is incumbent upon us, if we're even going to try to pay lip service to the idea that we're free, to know what those people are talking about.
Yes. Do you have any insight on the guest list this year?
Not any more than anybody else. It's probably the usual run-of-the-mill.
Henry Kissinger, the Queen of England.
You'll get David Rockefeller, and you get Kissinger, and you get the Merkel, and you'll get the head of well, maybe not Merkel. They don't really mess with administrators. That's why President Obama is not going to be there. Although he may have slipped in briefly to one of those meetings back, I guess in 2008. Maybe they were trying to vet him, before they let him be president. But usually they don't mess with the administrators. These are the true movers and shakers, the CEOs, the guys with the majority of stock, the controlling stock. That's another thing a lot of people don't understand. They think you have to have more than 51% of stock in a company to control that company. And yet, the fact is, if you own 2% of the stock and nobody owns more than 1%, you have controlling stock. Right. You can control that company. But people don't really understand that. They don't understand. Heck, they don't even understand how a bank works. You go give $100 to the bank, and then on the promise that when you want your $100 back, you can get it, and they'll be keeping it safe for you. Except they don't just squirrel it away. They turn around and loan it to somebody at 20% interest, and then when they pay back that loan, they make $20. Okay. Now, when you come get your $100 back, do you get the $20? No. The bank keeps the $20, plus they charge you service fees. So in other words, they're making money off your money and then charging you money for making money off your money. It's pretty squirrely when you really get to looking at it, but most people don't bother, and I understand that. I find finances just extremely boring. That's why I don't have any money, I guess. But as a newspaper reporter and as a journalist, I've been forced to look into finances, and it's really an intriguing subject. In fact, I agree with the fellow that wrote the book about the Federal Reserve System and said that it has all the trappings of a religion. You've got your high priest. They only understand what's really going on. And then you got your acolytes. They run around and take care of business, but they don't really understand what's going on. And it's all couched in lofty terms that nobody can really understand. And this whole derivative market thing, I don't think anybody truly understands derivatives. The best I can tell you about a derivative is that it's a bet, okay? If you're dealing in cotton futures or cattle futures, well, I'm going to bet that you lose this year, okay? Maybe there's storms, bad weather, your herd is thinned or your cotton doesn't come out, so I'm going to bet that you're going to lose money, and if you do, then I make money because I bet the right thing. But then it gets squirrelier because then they start betting on the bets. Well, that sounds like a good bet, so I'll bet that bet's going to be right. And then, well, I'll bet that bet's okay to bet on that bet. And the whole thing, of course, ballooned up. And we see what happens when the bottom finally falls out. If you go study past history, you study about the tulip scandal in Holland and the wooden sticks in England back in the 1700s, and you'll find that actually this has happened all through history on various things, but now it's happening with our money that we grew up thinking, that's dollar's pretty solid. It'll always be there. Well, I hate to say this, but I think we may be looking at the end of the dollar before too many more months.
Well, I'm glad you said that because You're a man of great wisdom. You've been here many, many years. You wrote the book that the movie JFK was based off of. So I think you would be a great person to answer this question. And the question is, where is the United States heading over the next few years? Are these conspiracy theories becoming conspiracy fact? Is the country and our sovereignty as we know it going to be completely blown away to the point to where even the average Joe understands that we're living in a new world order? And, of course, what's going to happen to the dollar?
Oh boy. Well, there's several questions. They're wrapped into one. But basically, I think that, no, there's never going to, I think the time isn't quite yet when the average person is going to truly understand what's happening to them. And that's because, the globalists, as they call themselves, these people who control the 5 banks. They control all the finances of America. They also control the 5 corporations media corporations that tell us everything that we see and hear. So as long as they've got that control, most people will just keep watching TV and think, oh, well, things will get better. And, oh, well, we'll just vote for a Republican this time and maybe it'll be okay. Of course, last time I thought maybe we'll vote for a Democrat, it'll be okay, and nothing changed. So this time I'll just keep playing. I'm going to vote for Obama, okay? So I'm sure they'll be okay because they just don't get it. And by the time they do get it, then it'll be time for martial law and the FEMA camps that people like me and others, Alex Jones and Jeff Rance and other people have been talking about for years, and they've been called conspiracy nuts and kooks. And now they have a bill in Congress that will legalize, authorize, and solidify what's already been going on, which is the FEMA camps. Okay?
Well, they had PD 51 that was authored in, I want to say, 2008, and that was a presidential directive that authorized the FEMA camps as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, they've been using directives and executive orders and all kinds of things, but yet they've been, the whole time they keep saying, oh, no, well, that's not right. And the people who are saying, no, it is right, have been called nuts and kooks. But it turns out that conspiracy theorists are right. In fact, they've been right about just about everything that come down the pike. I defy you to name me more than 2 or 3 conspiracies that have gotten prominence that haven't turned out to be correct. They said, well, Kennedy was killed by a conspiracy. Well, polls show most people now accept that as a fact. Then they said Nixon's a crook. Yeah, well, turns out he was. Vietnam is not going to end well. Well, it didn't. You can come right on up. Reagan was shot by a lone nut, except the problem was the lone nut, Hinckley, had a 8-shot revolver, and there were 9 shots recorded being fired. Where'd the extra shot come from? So you got conspiracies there. You've got Waco. You've got Ruby Ridge. You've got Oklahoma City bombing. There's more stuff coming out on that now and showing that the official story that we've been handed was, of course, a pack of lies. That there was a lot more going on. And, of course, need we even get into 9/11? See, that's still a bit fresh, so everybody's still in denial on that one. But for about almost half the country now understands that there was something more going on to 9/11 than we know about. And, in fact, John Farmer, who was the chief counsel of the official 9/11 commission handpicked by George W. Bush, has stated publicly that the account of 9/11 as given to the 9/11 Commission staff and its report and to the Congress and to the media and to the public is almost entirely and inexplicably untrue. Those are his words. It's untrue. What we've been told is not true. So all down the line, people who try to say, wait a minute, look at this. Now, oh, you're just a conspiracy nut. You're just a conspiracy buff, a theorist. Well, let me tell you something about theory. If you can prove something, it's no longer a theory, right?
Absolutely. Well, what I find funny is that theory is part of the scientific method. You have to have a theory in order to prove it. And people say, oh, you're crazy for coming up with those theories. Well, if we don't come up with the theories, how are we going to find the evidence to lead us to conclusions?
Exactly. That, well, if we don't come up with theories, then we're simply left with the official story. And as I just pointed out, the official story, more often than not, has turned out to be totally false.
I would say about 99.999% of the time. And let me give
exactly.
you.
That's why I'm saying, I wish somebody point to me any prominent conspiracy theory that has absolutely turned out to be phony and false.
Right. We had the fruit of the boom, the underwear bomber. We had the shoe bomber. All of those were all government operatives. It was a problem, reaction, solution type scenario. Now, recently we had some neo-Nazis who had created a bunch of, I guess, small explosives, and they had guns and things like that, and they were going to attack some kind of buildings. I think it was in Washington or somewhere else. But we didn't hear anything about that. And I think that was one of the very few circumstances where we had an actual quote unquote homegrown terror cell, for lack of a better term, but some people that were willing to use violence as a means to create political change. But we don't hear anything about it because it's not a controlled establishment creation.
Exactly. And they're playing with fire because personally I think that they are attempting to press the American public so hard that they will get that kind of violent reaction. And they're working cards it real hard. When you start telling people that their kids can't have a lemonade stand, and you start arresting farmers for selling milk, and you won't let people eat what they want to eat, and, et cetera, and then you start moving in on the guns. You can't have your guns. We're going to take up your guns. Right now, if you're a military veteran, and they're going to ask you some questions. Have you ever thought about suicide? And if you ever answer any of those, they'll take your guns away. They're going to say, well, you can't have a gun. Okay? I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's going on, and they're going to keep pressing this until enough people get 30,000 drones over our heads here in the next few years.
Well, we already have them. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to skip the break and just go right to the bottom, right to the top of the hour. But we already have them. We moved to Colorado from Texas a year ago. And as soon as we hit Colorado, we've never been here before. As soon as we crossed into it, there was a huge sign that said this highway is patrolled by unmanned aircraft.
Well, you know what? I guess if you're on a public road, you wouldn't have much of an excuse. But I guarantee you, if I see one over my house, I'm going to take it down with a shotgun, okay? And when they come and say, hey, what are you doing? I'm just going to say, well, I thought it was a terrorist device. Americans wouldn't just spy on other Americans. That's got to be a terrorist tactic, right?
And then you can give them back a little pink model.
Pressing it, I'll say, well, it was self-defense. Things up there, I don't know what it's doing. I don't know what's got in it. It might be spraying something. I could drop something on me. I don't know what it is. This is self-defense. I'm not going to allow somebody to come and lurk around my front door, and I'm not going to allow somebody to hover in a spy with a spy camera over my house.
And then make sure you have.
But see, that's what they're looking for. That's what they're looking for. They just keep pushing it until people start fighting back. And when they fight back, then they're going to say, "See, we told you those terrorists were here. Martial law, please."
Yes, and I think that's what they ultimately want. Because they're gearing up with the FEMA camps.
But if you don't fight back, then where are you?
Exactly.
You just, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, until, you're just part of the chain gang, and it's like, working your way into the government building to stand in line so they can tell you what to eat and how to live, when to go to the bathroom, what job you're going to have, and how much money you're going to make.
Right. What is your opinion on the geopolitical situation that's going on right now? It looks like we've surrounded Iran strategically, and now that is ultimately going to be the next move. But there seems to be a power there, some type of force, I'm not sure what it is, that's preventing them from going into Iran.
Well, we're back kind of in a certain way back to the old MAD strategy, okay, mutual assured deterrence, because China and Russia are doing business with Iran since we've got them boycotted. And you're right, we got them surrounded. Iran is the biggest, that's the biggest nothing issue, okay? Oh, they're working hard. They might build a nuclear weapon. Well, wait a minute. What about the 600 nuclear weapons that Israel has? What about the nuclear weapons Pakistan has? What about the nuclear weapons India has? If you were surrounded by neighbors who didn't like you and wanted you dead and wanted you out of the way, and they were armed to the teeth with big bore rifles, you'd probably want to get a big bore rifle, wouldn't you?
Oh,
so
yeah.
that you could defend yourself.
Oh, well, I say let Iran have a nuclear weapon, because what a nuclear weapon does is it gives you a say in UN meetings. Right now, they just completely ignore them completely.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what they're worried about. But actually, the real thing is we're acting as a proxy for Israel. Netanyahu has actually said we own America, essentially, and he's right. The Israel lobby just dominates Washington, D.C., so they use us so that they won't start a Arab-Israeli war. All right? So Iran is their big problem, and not because of any possible nuke. Like I said, Israel's got, 600 times more nukes than Iran could come up with if they managed to build one. But the thing is, the conventional weapons, thanks to China and Russia, Iran now has conventional missiles and conventional weapons that can reach deep into Israel and pinpoint military targets, okay? So they could have one fell swoop, one big attack, and they might be able to pretty well neutralize Israel, and that's what scares them to death. So they want to attack as a preemptive strike. They want to attack Iran. But they don't want to attack Iran because that could be a long, protracted, costly war, and Iran's a much bigger country than they are and has many more soldiers and much more equipment. So they want the U.S. to attack Iran. And okay, whatever, sure, whatever you want. Okay. We just go along with it, Teddy Roosevelt really had it down pretty well when he says, hey, speak softly and carry a big stick, okay? We've got the big stick. We got the biggest military in the history of the world. The military budget in the United States is larger than the military budget of every other major nation combined, okay? So we got the big stick, so why don't we start speaking softly and just say, look, guys, you guys take care of your own problems, but you start something, we'll finish it. See, I was always real proud of the United States growing up because we were the nation that stopped wars. We didn't start them, but these days, hey, we're starting them.
Well,
and now they've been trying to start a war with Iran for 10 years now.
On the surface, that's the way it would appear, but when you really go and research things, we've started pretty much every war, and not we as the United States, but the bankers, the corporate interests behind everything.
The controllers.
I'd be far. Yes, exactly.
That's true. Yeah, you can go all the way back to the war between the states when Abraham Lincoln was saying that he didn't want a war, but then he sent orders to maintain a fort to control the port of Charleston, which he knew was just untenable. That was just unacceptable. And then he sent supplies, and then he called up 660,000 troops. So, it was obvious that he was going to come fight you. In the South, all they want to do is be left alone. Hey, we're pulling out. We're taking our toys. We're going home. You just be good, do whatever you want to do, just leave us alone. And then World War I. World War I was just about over in favor of Germany, and France was just devastated, and England was bled dry. And then they brought the Americans in, and it shifted the whole thing. And that was all because the Lusitania, which we now found out was indeed carrying war supplies and was allowed into a dangerous area with U-boats, thanks to Winston Churchill, who was Lord of the Admiralty at the time. And then we get to World War II, and we find out that, yes, the Japanese did attack Pearl Harbor, but that was because Roosevelt cut off their oil supplies, which they depended on. About 80% of their oil came to the United States. So we cut that off in the summer of 1941, and basically left them two choices. They could either attack us, or they could just dry up and blow away. Well, that wasn't a hard choice. So actually, you're right. But at least in other wars, Vietnam was my war. That's when I served in the Army, in fact, in military intelligence. And we kind of got tricked into that one. We kind of just, eased into it. Oh, we're sending a few advisors here. No, we're setting up NATO. Not NATO, SEATO, Southeast Asian Treaty Organization. That's created by the United States. And, we're going to have to protect, and we got to divide Vietnam into North and South. And, here, Ho Chi Minh, we'll let you have the mineral free north, and we'll take the mineral rich south, knowing full well that that wasn't going to fly, and that sure enough, people in the south, the Vietnamese, they began to form the Viet Cong and try to get the foreign invaders out of their country like they'd done the French.
While you were serving, did you encounter any what's the term that they were using back then? Enemy aircraft or enemy helicopters?
Well, now, I didn't serve in country, okay? The closest I got was Fort Dix, New Jersey. But that's where the planes were heading out with fresh new troops. But are you alluding to UFOs?
Yes, because from my understanding...
Okay, well then let me tell you my story. I did meet a fella who arrived in South Vietnam, and his job was to be an air traffic controller. And on the first day on the job, he goes into the office space there where the ATCs were operating, and he was looking over the shoulder of one of them, and he sees these blips zipping around. He said, "Hey, what's that?" And the old hand ATC says, "Oh, don't worry about it. Those are UFOs. They come and go. We see them all the time." So yes, there's lots of UFO stories coming out of Vietnam.
Well, I recently started looking at Nick Redfern's research, and he says that the government is trying to create portals to summon Greys in order to harness the power militarily. And these Greys are basically demonic entities. I know you've written The Alien Agenda. Has your research taken you in any direction like that?
Well, the problem there is the interpretation that you want to put on it. There is a reality. Let's say, for example, that you and I, and I assume that's Sherry there with you.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's say you and I and Sherry are out walking in the woods, and this little diminutive green figure runs across our path and runs off into the woods. Well, you might say, "Whoa, I just saw a demon." And Sherry might say, "No, I saw an alien." And I might say, "Oh, I thought it was a leprechaun," So the reality is there, but we're not really sure on exactly who they are and what they want. And so therefore it's open for interpretation, and it kind of depends on your religious, spiritual viewpoint or your worldview as to how you're going to categorize them. I know plenty, and I have run into plenty of people and interviewed plenty of people who have had experiences with these beings, and very few of them seem to think that they're demons. That seems to come from just a religious mindset who is simply used to thinking in terms of angels and demons. Since they don't think they're angels, they must be demons. But I'll tell you the one thing, and this is kind of reassuring. The one thing I do know, beyond any shadow of a doubt, is whoever these beings are, if it was their purpose to attack the earth, to blow up our cities, to kill everybody or eat everybody, as we see in the movies, what was the one with Will's Independence Day? In Independence Day or in any number of them, we battled for Los Angeles. If that was their purpose, they would have done it long before now. I mean, let's face it, the historical evidence shows us that this world has been interfacing with non-human intelligences all the way back through recorded history, and probably before that. But since it wasn't recorded, we don't know about it. All right? And so if that's the case, well, then wait a minute. Why didn't they come and invade the planet when all we had to fight with was swords? Okay? Why wait until we have space platforms and laser-guided technology and computers and, particle beam weapons, all kinds of things? Nah, that is not apparently their purpose. So you can kind of relax on that account. But then that leaves, well, then what is the purpose? And again, you're just free to make up your own individual interpretation.
I tend to go with Bill Cooper's analysis on the situation, that they needed our software, our DNA, and other bodily fluids, chemicals, things like that.
Bodily fluids.
Yes. Yes, and that we needed their hardware, and so we made an exchange with them, and the deal was cut with the governments.
I think there may be some truth to that, but I don't want to disparage the departed, but I happen to know that Bill Cooper had lots of problems, and that everything he tried to put out there was not necessarily truthful. And that me, he was lying. He just didn't know, or he was mixed up. I don't know. But I know that a lot of the things he purports is simply not true, so I think we have to take that with a grain of salt. But then that, again, we're back to the fact that, everybody's kind of got a handle on it. We're all like the blind man, the elephant. Remember the story? Mm-hmm. The blind man, the elephant, and they all got a piece of the elephant, and one said, well, the elephant's like a fire hose, and the other said, no, it's like a garden hose, and the other said, no, it's like a rope. The other one has his ears, said, no, it's like a fan. The other one's got his side, and he's patting along. He said, no, it's like a wall. The other one's got his legs. He said, no, it's like a column. And they were all right, but they only had a piece of it. And I think that's kind of where we are on the ET situation.
Absolutely.
We're not even sure they come from another planet. They could come from another time or another dimension. And in fact, I've lived through all that. When I was a young guy in the 50s, the big question was, do they come from Mars or do they come from Venus? And then we got a little more sophisticated in the 70s and 80s, and the question changed to, well, do they come from Alpha Centauri or Zeta Reticula 4? And today we're even more sophisticated, know more. And now the question is, do they even come from another time? Do they come from another dimension? And personally, I think the answer is yes, all of the above.
I tend to agree with you. And I always tell the audience to listen to everything and then take out whatever resonates with them. So that's what I try to do.
That's a good thought. That's a good way to go. Yeah.
Yes.
So because, for instance, one of the things that's been pushed over the years is that the driver of the car turned around and shot Kennedy inside an open limousine in front of all this crowd of several hundred people, broad daylight. Well, keep in mind that theory didn't surface until the late 80s. So, you got like 20 years, 25 years went by, and nobody ever said a word about anything like that.
Well, I have examined the footage very, very closely, and I think that that's a complete fallacy and maybe even a rabbit trail.
It totally is. I could explain it to you, but it's not worth explaining. It's just, it's when you're told, when you're given an expectation, and then you see a blurry film, and you go, oh, wow, look, I think that must be the gun, and that must be the flash, and no, it's simply not there. But my point on this is that, something like that, if that indeed had happened, there would have been somebody, Bill and Gail Newman, who are still alive, and who I'm still in touch with, who were standing on the North Grassy Knoll, and they immediately flung themselves on their young children to protect them. They were like, I don't know, no more than 10 feet away from Kennedy at the time he was shot. Gene Hill, standing right there. Charles Brim, others, okay? And I've talked to all these people, and they're all standing right there. And not a one of them said, oh, by the way, the driver turned around and shot Kennedy. All right? Now, again, if indeed that had happened, would they have covered it up? Well, if it was part of a plot, yes, they would have. But could they have kept that truly quiet? No, man. The Secret Service would have gossiped among themselves. FBI agents would have gossiped. There would have been whispers all the way down through today about people saying, here's what really happened. And that didn't start until the late 80s. And then you still have people that carry that thing on because they won't take the time and the trouble to actually investigate it like you did.
Yes, I completely agree. But that's what we have to do. We have to investigate everything and get to the absolute truth. But unfortunately, with the 60, 70 years that our generation has, if we're lucky, the previous generation, I think, has 80 or 90 years. But with Fukushima and the core exit and Chernobyl and everything that we're bombarded with, I don't see us living.
Kind of cutting it down, isn't it?
It is. It really is. But unfortunately, with this little amount of time that we have on this earth, I don't think that we can get down to the truth.
Well, I've been told that all my life. Back in journalism school, they, say, try to find the truth, and then there's always somebody that says, well, you can't find the truth. And to a certain extent, that is true. Truth is sometimes very relative, okay? Just ask your relatives. They probably got a different view of you and some of your activities than you do.
Oh, yeah.
So yes, it is true that truth is, ground truth is pretty hard to get at. But I'll tell you something. If you have a good brain and a good heart and you're open to all of the input and you look at everything you get your hands on, you can get pretty close to it, okay? And I know that because as a crime reporter, I chased ambulances for years, and I'd go out to wrecks, and I'd say talk to 10 witnesses of a car accident. And on one level, I'd get 10 different stories, okay? But if you'd synthesize those 10 stories and throw out the one or two that just didn't jive with anybody, I don't know where they were coming from, but take the majority consensus that the white car, went through the stop sign, hit the black car. If 9 out of 10 said that, never mind all the other details. Oh, I saw a little girl. No, something flew out the window. No, there were some birds scattering. Forget all that. If the basic consensus, 9 out of 10, said the white car busted the stop sign and hit the black car, you could pretty well take that to the bank. That's probably exactly what happened. And that's why it's necessary to listen to everybody and look at all of the evidence. And while we're on it, we generally think that circumstantial evidence is not very good. Oh, well, that's just circumstantial evidence. Never mind about that. Well, wait a minute. Actually, I would argue that circumstantial evidence may be the best evidence because you cannot fabricate the circumstances. The circumstances are the circumstances. But you can fake and fabricate the hard evidence. You can plant fingerprints. You can plant the weapon. You can move the body. You can make it look like an accident. You can make it look like a suicide. You can make it look like a car wreck and get away with murder, okay? But the circumstances are the circumstances. And so I think circumstantial evidence may be actually the best evidence. So always look at the circumstances and then go for the old detective's dictum, which is who benefits.
Exactly.
Who benefits from this crime? That's a big one.
Yes, that's the number one question in my opinion. But I would say that in this type of research, it gets a little complicated because if we have 20, 30, 40 researchers saying the exact same thing, we can take that as evidence, but there is always still the possibility that the information is being fed from a central point.
You're absolutely true. In fact, if you have 9 researchers, that said, Kennedy was killed by, and actually we kind of have this circumstance. Say you got 8 out of 10 researchers who say Kennedy was killed by a lone nut assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, 3 shots from the Spielberg depository. And you've got 2 who say, wait a minute, I've seen other evidence and I don't think that's right. Okay, then see, that pretty well supports your contention that those 2 might be right.
Right. I completely agree.
And see, and the whole thing's clouded anyway because, see, we're arguing philosophically here on the assumption that the playing field's level and that everybody's honest and they're all trying to find the truth. And even then you have problems, as we've just discussed. But in Kennedy assassination, 9/11, Waco, Ruby Ridge, Oklahoma City, once you've got the government involved and worse yet, the people who are running the government and making money off the government and actually setting policy for the government. And you know who I'm talking about. I'm not talking about our elected representatives. I'm talking about the power control group.
Right.
Well, once you've got that situation, well, then they hire people to muddy the water. They hire people to fudge the evidence. They hire people with big names like Vincent Bugliosi to write 1,700-page books, you know, doing nothing but trying to substantiate the Warren Commission, which has already been trashed over the past 50 years, you know. And so, you know, so that complicates the situation even worse because we are not talking about a honest debate, okay? Here's an honest debate, and that would be the controversy over abortion, okay? How's that an honest debate? Well, because I've looked deeply into all of that, and I find that on both sides of that argument are thoughtful, educated, knowledgeable, well-intentioned people, okay? They simply can't agree on certain facts and the interpretation of those facts in the abortion argument. So, okay, I say, why should it be a problem? We'll just agree to disagree. But we don't have to do it disagreeably, and let's just keep working at it. Each side is free to voice their opinions and post their billboards and, you know, hand out pamphlets and write articles and try to sway the public to their way of thinking. That's what happens in a free society, okay?
Right.
And now in a society that's not free, you get the government stepping in saying, you cannot have an abortion, or you must have an abortion, or we're going to fund abortions even though we're taking tax money from people who don't want to fund that. That's not free. There's a problem there. But anyway, that is an illustration of a legitimate controversy. 9/11, Kennedy assassination, they are not legitimate controversies. And yet, everyone in this country, I don't care what their viewpoint might be on those two subjects, would agree that both 9/11 and the Kennedy assassination are at least controversial, okay? But actually they're not. They only appear controversial because of the wide gulf between people who have accepted the government's official story, and on the one hand, and on the other hand, people who have actually studied the facts of the cases.
Yes, I completely agree. I think the whole topic of abortion is kind of just a divide and conquer tactic. I mean, the federal government doesn't even have the right to dictate whether abortion is legal or not, but they ask every single candidate, are you for abortion or against abortion?
I know. It is. It's a Tavistock mind control game. And the thing is, on abortion, I don't see why there should be any problem at all, okay? Since there's a controversy, a legitimate controversy, then the question should be left up to the individual and her physician and family. Okay? They decide. Nobody in the state should be able to say you must have an abortion or be able to say you cannot have an abortion.
Right.
You leave that up to people. It's called freedom. What a concept.
We've got about 5 minutes left, Jim, and I just wanted to ask you, in all of the years that you've been researching, what would you say the quote-unquote conspiracy, for lack of a better term, what would you say the biggest conspiracy is, or maybe the one that sticks out to you the most?
Okay, here we go. And I can do it, hopefully, in the time period. I know I can. It's not that hard. This is not only the proof of conspiracy, it is proof of the biggest conspiracy going on today. All right. Even as we are sitting here talking on this Friday afternoon, I think you guys would agree with me that we have off-the-shelf technology today on hand that could adequately feed, clothe, house, and give basic medical care to every living human being on this planet. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes. I think scarcity is artificial.
Right. Okay. So we agree that right now we've got the technology to feed, clothe, house, and give basic medical care to every person on this planet. And yet, as we're talking here on this Friday afternoon, and as your listeners are listening, somewhere in the back of our mind, we know that it's a fact that there are thousands, perhaps millions of children starving to death right now.
Yes, there is.
Speak. Okay? Now, whoa, wait a minute. Why is that? I don't want that. You don't want that. Sherry don't want that. You know, why is it that way? Well, once you get past the facile rationalizations, transportation, tax money, distribution of goods and dictatorships, and right. Okay, well, hey, once you get past that, the basic answer is it's that way because somewhere somebody wants it that way. Now, that's the biggest conspiracy going, and it's proof of conspiracy. If nobody wanted those children to be starving tonight, they wouldn't be starving, would they?
No, they wouldn't.
So, I rest my case.
Right, right.
And it's up to us in the coming months and years to buckle down and quit being divided and conquered, and quit, don't run down in November and vote for Obama, okay? You do something else. Don't vote or vote for Ron Paul or do something else. All right? Write in somebody. Just show that you're not going along with the program. I'm over the hill but young folks, start thinking about what you can do to make the planet a better place. If you live in a city, start planting gardens and plant vegetable gardens. If the city said you can't do that, tell them where they can get off. Tell them I'm planting food for my family. And if you tell me I can't, this is self-defense. You're trying to starve my family, and we are not going to go into the Orwellian 1984 society. If you live in the country, if you live anywhere and you have access to a computer, start reaching out to people. Start checking out and finding out what's really going on and share that information because knowledge is power. And never forget that there's more of us than there are of them. It's the old 99% thing.
Very well said, Jim. We really appreciate your time this evening. JimMars.com. When's the book coming out?
Probably right after the first of the year sometime. January, February, maybe.
Great. Thank you Thank you very much for your time this evening, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Have a good one.
Take care. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, Jim Mars. Stay tuned. 2 more jam-packed hours right here on Truth Frequency. We'll get into the Bilderbergs. We'll get into the zombie viruses, quite possibly the zombie viruses. We'll do some speculation and also some fact-based research, too. We'll be right back.
Shades like a fatal car crash, can't seem to look away. I don't know what's before me, I've died inside, but from my rebirth I see with brand new eyes. The media lies, the government spies, free world controlled by devils in disguise. The television flickers at rates to hypnotize, aspartame by the picture, MSG supersize. Another mother cries for her son's lost life. Political greed breeds another genocide. No choices left, stand up and fight. Divided we fall, but united we survive. Now it's time to put the money in the bitches to the side. You'll never truly come up when you live a servant's life.
I hurt myself today to see if I still feel. I focus on the pain, the only thing that's true.
On the pain pain, I'll take it to the grave. I'd rather die free than live like a slave. I'd rather speak my mind, I won't bite my tongue. If you think I've said it all, I haven't even begun. They bring you to your knees with disease and vaccines. Another line of credit, the American dream. Ron Paul revolution, 20 million scream. But it doesn't really matter to the voting machines. Now they censor this on YouTube, labeled it extreme. Bernanke and his lackeys, printing phony green. Hit us with inflation, annihilate the nation. No investigation of the Bush administration. Obama runs on change, Brzezinski's in his ear. The only thing that changes is the puppet in the year. They open up the borders, truth is on our shoulders. Focus on the pain, this is the new world order. Order.
I hurt myself today to see if I still feel. I focus on the pain.
This is Joe Rogan, and you are tapped into the truth frequency.
You're really tapping into a hyperdimensional physics that's very related to these other dimensions. And consciousness is, of course, the foundation, I think, of what all of space, time, matter is emanating from.
I mean, the first thing to do is kind of construct a cartography of these states, you know, a map of these dimensions, if you will. This is what teaches each and every one of you people out there what you really are.
If you can think of reality as a projection of the collective consciousness or the collective unconscious, and you can see how disconnected and messed up and locked in self-service and fear the human consciousness is at the moment.
Because that's what it's all about. They want us focusing on the fear.
When you get sick of trying to find the enemy and you realize that the enemy has been inside of you and it's your insecurities, they come from our own inability to take the responsibility.
We're looking for truth here. We're not on either side.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, hour number 2 right here on Truth Frequency. We'll be joined by Shep of the IntelHub here in a few minutes, right after the 5-minute break. And he has some great footage from Bilderberg. I'm just looking it over now, and very, very impressive. High-definition shots. I don't want to go into it in too much detail because I want to let them say what they need to say and introduce everything, but I'm really amazed with the quality of their production. I mean, they're one of the only ones to have HD footage of everybody arriving, and they have the pictures posted on their website as well, theintelhub.com, and many props. For lack of a better term, I'm not sure what kind of term I'm looking for, but props to Shepard and Bellis and Alex of the IntelHub for bringing it in this fashion. I mean, they say they were going. I was like, it's the same thing every year, but it's really impressive, and it just blows me away. What are they talking about? What are they discussing? What's going to be the agenda for 2012, 2013? Who are they going to institute as the new president? Those are all questions that we'll ask Shepard and Bellis, and I'm pretty sure that he has some on-the-scene information as well. Is everything okay, sweetheart? Okay. And if you're just tuning in, Jim Mars just joined us. JimMars.com. Fascinating discussion. We were discussing the scientific method behind finding the truth, and I thought that was really fascinating because we've never really broken that down. And he tend to agree with a lot of the things that I say. Listen to everything, take out whatever resonates with you. But we do have to remember that when the information is coming from a central point, then many people can be deceived. And rather than looking at somebody and saying, oh, that guy's disinformation, I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. And I like the term misinformation better when somebody is propagating something that isn't necessarily true or is later disproven. Because misinformation denotes that it's not done on purpose. It's an error, a flaw in the information. Disinformation is something that's purpose. A disinformation campaign, of course, would be put out by the government to... there's the break music. So we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. We'll try to get Shep of the IntelHub on live from Bilderberg and see what's going on for 2012, 2013. We'll be right back.
Our people believe that every human being has got two minds. Has got two minds. Has got two minds. The mother mind and the warrior mind. The warrior mind looks at things logically, looks at things logically. The mother mind does not think in a line way. The mother mind thinks sideways and upwards and downwards, and upwards and downwards, and upwards and downwards. We must feel what is going on in the world. We must awaken the mother mind in us.
Protest groups converge to denounce secret Bilderberg Conference. London Guardian reports. At the base of the driveway, the protesters congregated to denounce their meeting and shout at the occasional vehicles that entered and exited. The gathering outside of the Westfield Marriott Hotel in Chantilly, Virginia, included Ron Paul supporters, Occupy veterans, members of the 9/11 Truth Movement, and Oath Keepers. Of course, Shep of the IntelHub is live covering the events of the week. So let's go to Shep. Shep, welcome to the show.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be on the show, Chris. Man, what an event it's been the last couple of days over here at Bilderberg 2012. We ended up in a monsoon earlier. Our gear was soaked, waterlogged. I had some of our gear just get totally waterlogged. We got out of there. We went back to the hotel. We're going to be, we're transferring some files, and that's going on while we're at the steakhouse right here because we haven't eaten all day. We've just been nonstop the whole time we've been here. Jones just walked in. He's sitting down. Man, this protest was pretty much like a awesome turnout. There was 500 people there at one point. They had a 6 foot tall perimeter chain link fence around the front face of the Westfield Marriott, Chris, if you can imagine. They started bringing out these barricades on the first day, putting them in the road as things started to escalate with the amount of activists there at the Westfield Marriott at the front gate. The police presence is heavy. It's even heavier today. And it's the Fairfax County Police. So, our tax dollars are hard at work paying for these globalist scum to be protected behind closed doors. Did you get a chance to see those photos, Chris?
I did take a look at the photos. Yes, absolutely amazing footage. I mean, it looks like you were just inches away from these cars.
3 inches away. They said it was I was the only one to get the shot. No one else was doing it. We were the most aggressive reporters on the scene, I think. It was just it went down pretty well. The police weren't really letting anyone film like I was. I had kind of a connection to one of the police officers I kind of befriended, and he was actually helping me get the shots.
Oh, that's amazing. That's great to hear that there's the boys in blue who are still on our side. They see all of these globalists meeting and they know something's wrong. And even if they're hired there to be security, they're at least letting people like you get the shots that they need to expose this atrocity.
Absolutely, yeah. I would say it's like a 70-30 split. About 30% of them seem interested. The other 70% are just total minions of the New World Order or scared of losing their job. So, pretty makes for pretty interesting times to be a police officer, I guess. I was watching them. Some were kind of starting to cross over from all the bullhorning. They were just getting constantly bullhorning the police, saying, hey, why don't you read this, Google that? You're looking at your phone right now. Stop texting. You need to Google Operation Northwood, all sorts of stuff. Pretty eventful day. There were several arrests. An AFP reporter, female, probably weighed about 100 pounds or less, got body slammed by about 6 cops. I think we got the footage of that. We're going to put it up on the IntelHub.com later. I got a couple more pictures of some globalists. One was waving at me. I'm getting ready to go through the footage, the shots. Yesterday I had to do everything manually because I couldn't figure out how to enable burst shooting on my camera. So everything you saw was just manually. Today I enabled burst shooting to where I could shoot 10 frames a second. We're going to see what's going on with that. Yesterday a car kind of missed the turn, and they were trying to turn around, and I ran out after, and they were taking evasive maneuvers, and I chased them about 500-600 feet, and the whole crowd just went crazy, and I got to the shot.
Excellent. What's the atmosphere like there?
Pretty friendly. A couple provocateurs in the beginning that ended up leaving pretty quick. Today I was watching the police. It looked like they were starting to come around. It looked like they were kind of chilling out, kind of backing down, and then all of a sudden they just got aggressive and started slamming people. They arrested an Iraqi war veteran yesterday who was anally probed in the police department. They kind of harassed him, roughed him around a little, and they forcefully inoculated him with a tuberculosis shot.
Oh my God.
We've got that interview up on our YouTube, or we're about ready to get it up. I think it's up there right now. Featured on our YouTube. You can go to the IntelHub.com, click on the banner that says Bilderberg 2012 YouTube, and you can see that interview.
Do you have a list of confirmed attendees so far?
We have the list posted at the IntelHub.com. However, the IntelHub is one of the only news agencies in the world to actually confirm beyond speculation 6 to 10 of the attendees well, we've got their photos revealed at the IntelHub.com.
Very nice. That's amazing work that you're doing over there. Any word from Jim Tucker? Anybody who's been researching Bilderberg
I
very
got
heavily?
shots of Jim Tucker yesterday. He was looking pretty frail. He could barely make it out of the limo that dropped him off, or the taxi. And, he made it on the site, but that was about it. So I got some of the last pictures we might be seeing of Tucker. But, unfortunately, but one thing I was talking about Alex Thomas with earlier is the fact that what a sight that must have been for Tucker.
Oh, yeah. Any chatter on the topics of discussion? Any idea of what they may be bringing in?
One of the things that's probable, we're seeing gold prices spike right now. We think it's probable they might be talking about crashing the dollar. We're also seeing this Rothschild-Rockefeller correlation where they're coming together. They're merging. They're going to try and buy up all the banks and consolidate the banks that they orchestrated the very financial crisis to blow these banks out. And now they're going to buy them up for pennies on the dollar, with moving towards one more step towards the New World Order, one world government, full control and domination of the populace.
Of course. I mean, that's the whole agenda there. The only thing that I'm wondering is what is stopping this agenda, and the only thing that I can think of is people like yourself who are there in their face, exposing it, and making sure that they're not going to get away with this in secret.
Absolutely, and you should have seen all the alternative media turned out. I mean, it was pretty amazing, Chris. These guys are doing hard work, good work. Met a lot of the alternative media, met Jones, got interviewed on Infowars.com today, or I think it was today earlier. Pretty good that all these groups are kind of coming together and kind of working together.
That's what we need. I mean, there's been a definite divisive campaign to demonize the people who turn out to be really, really cool. At least that's my experience. People that are trolled constantly and people who the trolls always talk crap about turn out to be the very nicest people.
And that want to work with others.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all done by design. Let me ask you this. Going through TSA, your trip from where you went to where you are now, any problems there?
Yeah, they stripped my bag apart right away. They were really working on that. I got a little footage of that uploaded to the YouTube, but they were going through it pretty thoroughly. I pretty much expected it. But when we got to Dallas-Fort Worth, they told Alex Thomas they detected explosives on him, and they kept swabbing him down. They were holding him at security. They were threatening him that they weren't going to release him, and it was pretty interesting.
Is Alex around?
Yeah, he's doing another interview right now.
Oh, is he? Okay, because I wanted to get his first-hand account.
I'm so sorry. I got to go on air and on another show.
No problem. We understand. You guys are doing great work over there. Thank you very much for your time this evening, Shep.
Thanks, Chris.
Absolutely.
Look forward to seeing you soon.
Absolutely. Take care. And we'll keep an eye out for more updates from Shepard Ambellis of the IntelHub. Absolutely amazing work that they're doing over there in Chantilly, Virginia.
Absolutely. I wish we could go do things like that. But we've been trying to get the network up for you guys. We've been working on a lot of other stuff and the wedding.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So,
you get to a point, at least where I am, that this kind of stuff, it's interesting, but it's more of, like Swami said, you just kind of sit back and you just become the observer rather than trying to influence or uninfluence certain events in the global reality. And that's kind of where I am. And I know a couple of months ago, I should say, I was making the point that I couldn't research certain things. I couldn't research murders and the horrific things that are taking place because I felt the empathy that I felt that what the victims were going through, too much empathy. And I found myself recently just taking a step back and seeing it from an outside perspective, as Cherie was telling me what needs to be done. And so I'm glad that I was able to get out of that, I don't want to call it a rut, but overly empathetic situation that I was in. And I hope that a lot of people out there are also able to get over that overly empathetic situation that they get in. And I think ultimately it's just a progression of the consciousness shift, but I started looking at different cases of serial killers and this whole zombie attack and other things like that, some of these horrific things that people are doing, and I was able to actually look at it as a scientist rather than as a human being or as an alien observing a whole different species, and I've realized that these people are not human. They're not like me. They're a different species, so it's the same thing as watching a lion kill an antelope, because I'm not a lion. I might have the heart of a lion, but I'm not a lion. But I can watch something like that and go, this is nature at work. This is what I'm observing. Same thing with some of these horrific things that have been happening. One thing that I was looking at is this serial killer who is going around in Canada right now, and I'm trying to pull up the name because I don't have the name in front of me, but basically, from my understanding of the situation, he is a bisexual porn star named Luca. I don't have the name in front of me. Let me see if I can pull it up.
He's just one of several of these cannibalistic type of attacks that we've seen lately. I don't know what's going on, but you get more hints as you go deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole. It all started back in the middle of May 10th through the 15th-ish, when you heard about necrotizing fasciitis, that's flesh-eating bacteria, taking over in all these different pockets around the country. But then on May 16th, there was a rash at a Hollywood, Florida high school. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with that area, Hollywood, Florida is right down the street, basically, from Miami, where that cannibal, who was apparently on bath salts, if you believe the media, tore that guy's face off and ate it and would not stop eating it, even after being shot repeatedly with an actual gun. Another guy all right, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Well, I've got this article here in front of me.
Yeah, go ahead.
His name is Luca Rocco Magnotta. Montreal's murder victim is missing man from China, police say. As body parts in the heinous videotaped murder that police attribute to a Toronto-born porn actor lie sealed in plastic at Montreal's morgue, police have confirmed the victim is the same person the Consulate General of China has identified as missing. Now, apparently what this guy did is he brutally dismembered a body. This is a porn star. He didn't seem to have any kind of want, need. He was getting paid well. He got plenty of women or men, whatever he preferred. And he seemed like, somebody that wouldn't do anything like this. And then all of a sudden he just snapped and he dismembered this body. It was about a 20-minute video. And I sat there and I watched it. And it was horrific. It was very disgusting. He kidnapped this man and basically was cutting his arms off, cutting his legs off, mutilating the body. Once the body was mutilated, the arms and legs missing, then he had sex with it on camera, and then he took the hand that he had cut off and began playing with himself with his hand. Now, after that, he started sending it to the campaign managers and political offices of the Canadian government. And they're saying now that he escaped to France and that he may be somewhere there. He's keeping a blog up and he's saying he will kill again. And this seems to be some type of game. I mean, this is really horrific stuff. And I've never watched a film like this before. And I wouldn't say proud of myself, but I would say I feel like I've reached another level where I can sit back and watch as an observer. And that prompted me to watch some interrogation videos of other serial killers and people like that. and try to analyze what is possibly going through these people's minds.
Apparently,
I still haven't been able to figure it out. I mean, this one guy who kidnapped, what was the girl's name?
Elizabeth Smart.
Yes, Elizabeth Smart. I was watching the interrogation video of the guy who kidnapped her, and he believed that he was some type of prophet, or maybe he was just using that as a kind of a persona to say, oh, look, I'm this holier than thou person. There's no way that I can ever possibly do anything evil like this, which seems to be the typical serial killer mentality. They always try to be the nice guy. As a matter of fact, another general out of Canada, and thank you to Kristen from, what's her website?
Is it Uncover the News?
UncoverTheNews.com. Yes,
yeah.
Yes. She brought all this to my attention. Another general, high-ranking general. He would be the equivalent of General Petraeus here in the United States. This general was in Canada. He started out with a little fetish where he liked to steal panties, and he liked to steal lingerie. And he would take pictures of himself wearing this stolen stuff, and then he would start stalking these young girls, and then he would go into their homes. And then it got bolder and bolder. He ran into a house wearing a mask, and he was completely naked and kind of stalked this one woman. And then it turned into kidnapping another woman. And then it turned into kidnapping a woman and murdering her. And again and again and again, they finally caught the guy. And he is a public figure, one of Canada's biggest military public figures. And this is going on right now. And I was watching this interrogation video and the confession, and the way he was trying to justify the actions to himself, and the way the interrogator was handling the process, and it was very, very disturbing. But the same thing with this other man, Lucas, whatever his name is, Luca something, and the way that he murdered this person and dismembered the body and sent it to police, and then it actually went into a sexual thing. I really don't know what's going on in the world right now, ladies and gentlemen. It's very difficult to wrap my mind around. And then we have countless numbers of zombie attacks here in the last few weeks. Cherie just came across an article of a new zombie attack where a mother... I'm actually going to hold that thought until we get back from break, and we'll get into the research a little bit deeper, because something is going on, and maybe it's a weapon or a virus or something is causing people to go crazy right now. We'll be right back right here on Truth Frequency.
We had come there to explore tryptamine hallucinogens. These are short-acting, very powerful psychedelic drugs. It is true that when you smoke DMT, for example, at a sufficiently high and prepared dose, you get L's. Everybody does.
ईश्वर सर्वभूतानां ब्रह्माधिपति ब्रह्मणोऽधिपति ब्रह्मा शिवो मे अस्तु सदा शिवो ईशान सर्वविद्यानां ईश्वर सर्वभूतानां ब्रह्माधिपति ब्रह्मणोऽधिपति ब्रह्मा शिवो मे अस्तु सदा
By now, we've all seen the awful story about the Florida man who was shot to death by police for refusing to stop chewing on another man's face. We joked around about it being the canary in the mine shaft of an impending zombie apocalypse, but as Tumblr blogger I Hope Rick Santorum helpfully points out in an appropriately viral post, this latest incident is not so much a warning shot as it is another in a disconcertingly intensifying stream of zombie-invoking headlines, and all from the past 2 weeks, and all from the Sunshine State. It all started on 5/16 with an ominous story about a mysterious rash at MacArthur High School in Hollywood that launched a hazmat investigation. 12 students and 2 teachers were treated and released. The source of the rash remains unknown. Flash forward 2 days, hazmat crews were called into Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport to determine the source of an unknown chemical that sent 5 people to the hospital. Theories abound, but an exact cause was not confirmed. On 5/20, the first real sign of trouble, 41-year-old Dr. Zachary Bird was arrested by the Florida Highway Patrol near Orlando and charged with felony battery charges for spitting blood in a patrolman's face. The article doesn't mention this, but he also had an unidentified vial of liquid with him, along with $46,000 in cash. He was extremely agitated and enraged, and repeatedly banged his head on the patrol car's plexiglass partition until he bled. A few days later, another mystery rash was reported at another Broward County school. A hazmat team was once again called in to investigate, and once again left without any concrete answers. The following day, a disoriented Canadian man was arrested aboard an American Airlines plane after he inexplicably attempted to rush the cockpit. The plane had just landed in Miami. On Saturday, an unidentified homeless man had some 80% of his face bitten off by 31-year-old Rudy Eugene. And here's the bad news. Whatever's happening in Florida appears to be spreading. The University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign tweeted the following warning to its students last night. Hazardous materials released at Institute for Genomic Biology. Escape area if safe to do so. Otherwise, seek shelter.
The Walking Dead is becoming a reality and the apocalypse is coming. First it was a zombie attack in Miami. Then in New Jersey, a man stabbed himself and threw his intestines at police. Now another man admitted he killed his roommate, then ate his heart and brains.
And just today, a woman admitted she killed her infant by decapitating it and then ate its brains and 3 of his toes.
Bob Tuscan is on the line, straight out of Florida. Bob Tuscan.
What the hell are you going to bring me on for after all that shit, Chris? Come on, dude. I'm crying here, man. This is messed up.
That is really messed up.
It is really, really messed up. I mean, you're right there down in Florida yourself.
My hometown, dude. I was born and raised in Hollywood, Florida. And I don't know if this is, what's that movie? 31 Days Later or whatever, but all I know is this world is going to hell in a handbasket and fast. And the powers that shouldn't be have been promising, and I mean promising, the inevitable bioterrorist attack. I met with Bob Graham on the 10th anniversary of 9/11. I looked that scumbag in the eye, and he told me out of his mouth, and you can go onto the YouTube and watch it if you want. He told me out of his mouth that no, the anthrax that we know for a fact that his counterpart from the University of Florida's Emerging Pathogens Department that we know came from Fort Detrick, he says no, dead bovine. In other words, he knows better, he's complicit, and he's the one saying that there's going to be an inevitable attack. He's the one that was there after September 11th on the Security Committee. He's the one who's privy to all this. And he knows deep down inside, and all these other scumbags know, that at the end of the day, if they quarantine themselves, they could care less what happens to the goyim, to the useless eaters. And that's okay for them on some level, but at the end of the day, Chris, this is a spiritual battle, and, you know, to see such evil in the world today, I mean, I don't know what to say, dude. This is just something that I'm speechless about. I mean, that... I got to get my composure here, dude.
Well, it truly is disturbing, and I think that we're on the right track here with the higher consciousness mentality and the higher consciousness rhetoric, because ultimately I think that's what will help us overcome any kind of bioweapon, or even if it's some kind of projected mind control weapon that's causing these urges for violence and these horrific animalistic behaviors that we're seeing all over the place. So I think ultimately you are 100% right, and you hit it right on the head. This is a spiritual battle that we're fighting, and
yeah,
I mean it's nuts.
I don't care if this is bath salts. I don't care if it's a bioweapon. I don't care what it is. There has to be some spiritual element to this. There has to be. People don't just do this.
What's the end result here? That's what I'm worried about. That's what I'm wondering. I wouldn't even say worry, just wondering. Where is this all heading? Because the first time I heard it, I said, nah, I'm not going to even look into this. This is just a freak occurrence. And I even told Cherie, if we see more and more and more, then we need to start looking into it.
I think that we also need to pay attention, amongst the other countless toxins and poisons and trails, and geez, the list is freaking ridiculous. But I think we also need to look at the fact that radiation exposure has its toll, and anybody who's flying and in the air is subjected to going crazy. So I don't want to say that the Fukushima culprit is the end all, but we do have to pay attention to that, and that's no happier of an outcome. Fukushima is just as much of a miserable, depressing mess that makes you want to just, on a spiritual level, transcend it all and get away from the 3D reality. But unfortunately, Chris, as much as I see that side of things, I'm here now in this 3D reality, and I am going to fight my ass off to try to protect and maintain what dignity we have. Because you know what, Chris? There's all these ugly stories that you just read, but I'm the type of guy, at the end of the day, deep down inside, wants to look at the glass as half full. And at the end of the day, I see all around us beautiful, beautiful nature, love. And I don't want to sound Pollyannish, I'm not trying to sound preachy here, but I see a lot of love. A lot of love. So I don't know if they might win this battle on a physical level. They might poison us. We might get sick and all have cancer. Whatever. I see love that transcends that, and they at the end of the day they're afraid of that, and at the end of the day they're the ones in fear.
Go ahead.
I think we just need to be motivated enough. They just proved that they can motivate rats, paralyzed rats, completely paralyzed, to start walking again. Just through motivation, just through proper motivational training.
Well, let me touch upon something that I was watching yesterday. This was an experiment. I couldn't get any details on it. It was at Live Leak. that I watched, but it looked like it was filmed in the 40s or 50s, black and white film. But they took a dog, they decapitated it, they hooked it up to this machine, and they were able to keep the head alive. Well, let me back up. First, it started out with just individual organs, keeping the heart alive, keeping the lungs alive. Then it turned into keeping the head alive. And the head would react to light, it would react to sound, it would react to touch, it would react just like a normal dog would react. And then they took it a step further. They drained the dog's blood. They took another dog, they drained the blood completely out of the dog, and then they hooked it up to this machine that pumped blood back in. And they left the dog dead, completely dead, for 10 minutes. And this was just enough time to make sure that it was completely dead, but not enough time for the cells to start decaying. Then they pumped the blood back into the dog, and the dog came back to life. And then 3 or 4 days later, he began running around. He began begging for food. He began acting like a normal animal. I mean, just as if that event never, ever happened whatsoever.
You have to believe, Chris, that if we know about this, there are certain people out there, those people we probably don't even know. They're not Henry Kissinger. They're not Barack Obama. These people are above that, I guess, in a sense, but or below, and depending on how you want to look at it. And they are actively involved with transhumanism. This is something that is going a bit beyond fiction. I mean, at the end of the day, we know that that's their goal. And I don't care if they live forever, Chris. I really don't care, because I see karma as transcending transhumanism.
Yes, it does. There's no way that you can, I mean, even if you kept your consciousness uploaded to a computer system where you could, quote unquote, live forever, at some point it's going to fall out from under them, because you can't cheat the karmic cycle of things. You can't. You just can't. I don't see how.
The video is called Soviet Animal Organ Experiments, Dog's Head Kept Alive. So if any of the listeners listening either live or on the archive want to look at that, it's on LiveLeak. Soviet Animal Organ Experiments, Dog Head Kept Alive. It makes me wonder, though, what happens to the soul in a situation like this?
I mean, these are all deep, profound philosophical questions that we need to address. And at the end of the day, I don't know why these guys would want to live forever. Wait a second. Because here's why. They have everything. They have complete control. And the only thing that is scarce for them is our lifespan. So what's the last thing on the list to control? Because at the end of the day, no matter how much money you have, your life is still only so limited.
Right.
So the bottom line is, I see this as them trying to actually be gods. They want to be gods. And we are all God, but none of us are the God. And I hate to say we're all God, because that's a whole different philosophical discussion. But I see us as all a part of creation, if you will. Or I shouldn't use that term either. But, it's not often I get to articulate myself on these sorts of deep topics. And I don't know that I have all the answers, but I feel like this is something that goes beyond, and that, they might consider themselves to be separate from that, but at the end of the day, they're not. They're a part of us. And if you want to look at entanglement and quantum physics and oneness and that sort of thing, we can see that. And we can see that under the influence of entheogens. Psychedelic experiences have shown me this. And I know they've shown them this sort of thing as well, which also scares them. And I shouldn't say them anymore, because that only feeds in to the divide and conquer.
Right. I completely agree. There's definitely something to entheogens. As a matter of fact, one of my clients, they were hippies, for lack of a better term. And Cherie and I went over there today, and I left a piece of equipment over there. But they tipped me a quarter of really nice homegrown herb. And the energy that these people had was just the most loving, light type of energy. And they didn't have a care in the world. They were completely aware of the stuff that we talk about, but they were able to transcend that. And I just want to say hello to them because they're probably listening, or they'll be listening on the archive. But thank you very much for that tip. That was awesome. Another customer of mine tipped me some shrooms the other day, too. That was really cool.
Are you incriminating your customers? Oh, wait, you're in a legal state.
Yeah, we're in a legal state. But it doesn't matter because all my clients are confidential anyways. So
Right.
Yeah. Cherie, can you tell us about that zombie virus that they found in that they're working on at MD Anderson? Did you do any research on that?
I'm trying to find it right now.
Okay. Well,
they're working on a virus, an actual virus.
An anti-cancer virus. Destroys cancer, creates zombie cells, basically. Let's see.
Well, there's reports of an AIDS-like virus from the kissing bug. Did you guys see this?
I heard about that.
Chagas disease.
Yeah, and they're, the CDC is trying to make it out to be the next HIV, which is a fraud, by the way, as many of your listeners know by now. And all of that's why none of these things we need to none of these things we need to jump to conclusions about. Because chances are there's a lot of hype. And if they could just convince us psychologically that we're all going to die, a certain number of the population is just going to fall over and die. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. People are so much, liable to do whatever they're told and to not take into consideration anything else and just, like I said, lie over and die because of a placebo effect.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was speaking with a good friend of ours, longtime listener, Chris Bogner, who's also a doctor, so he's done a lot of research into experiments like this. And they did an experiment with somebody in China who was on death row. And what they did is they told him, we have a way for you to die that is completely painless, and it will be just like going to sleep. If you'd like us to do it, we'll go ahead and do it. And so they blindfolded him, and they put him up on this bed. And while he was blindfolded, they pretended to cut his wrists. They gave him the sensation of the wrist being cut. Then they played a sound of dripping liquid, or maybe they dripped some liquid into a bucket or something like that, and it was a slow drip as if he was bleeding to death. And he died. He died.
Yeah, you told me this story.
Did I tell you the story? Yes.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of people that may say, well, maybe he was sick, or, maybe he had an unhealthy heart, and this shocked him to the point where he had a heart attack. It's hard to say. People die from broken hearts.
Right.
People die from stress. All sorts of things.
Right. I think it goes to show how powerful the mind can be.
Exactly. The mind and consciousness is so powerful. It's really all we have and all we can ever know.
It's a crazy world that we're living in. Terence McKenna said that there's nobody in control. That all these, conspiracy theories and everything like that, they're a bunch of BS because there's nobody in control. What we're seeing basically are the remnants of these people doing whatever they can to try to maintain control. But it's so unorganized that everything is just blowing up in their face, everything that they do. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it's an interesting thought. Have you heard Terence say that, and do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I haven't heard Terence say that. And, it is fascinating. And by the way, I wonder what Terence would say today.
Right.
If he was here. I haven't talked to Dennis in a while, but Dennis is also, his brother is extremely wise.
I haven't talked to Dennis in a while either. Maybe we'll give him a call and see maybe we can get him to join us tomorrow.
Yeah, we should. We should have him on. Because Dennis, he's really representing the legacy of his brother and himself as well. Independently, they're both quite brilliant, and I'm sure Dennis has some insights onto what's going on. Here's the thing though, Chris, I want to be careful here because I don't want people just to say, well, it's a spiritual thing and, we can just take in theogens and not have to be pragmatic and deal with things. Because I'm a solution-oriented kind of guy. I'm a fan of justice. Justice to me is extremely important. And I might die in that process of receiving justice. And I'm not trying to be a martyr either. So don't get that mistaken when I say that. I may happen to die. I might, whatever may happen. But at the end of the day, I'm a fan of justice, and I don't want to just escape because of a spiritual connection or the, experiences with the use of psychedelics. At the end of the day, we need to look at solutions. So I see a problem in hunger and suffering, and I don't want to just say, well, there's so much suffering, there's so much hunger, to the point where, well, I should just be suicidal perhaps. No, you can't be suicidal. You can't be an ostrich and put your head in the ground. You can't be apathetic. It might not be easy, but we have to address the problems we have while we're still here and before we meet our demise in whatever fashion that may or may not be. So I hear about the zombie apocalypse. How are we going to prevent this? How are we going to protect ourselves? How are we going to, we got to keep our eyes open. Obviously, we got to keep updating people as the story breaks and try to be ahead of the curve because we can't trust the powers that shouldn't be in our lamestream media for that. And we really have to be vigilant in this. I mean, there's no way around it. It's kind of tough love that we have to deal with. There is this notion of unconditional love that we need to get in touch with. And unconditional love includes tough love. And right. Tough love doesn't allow you to be ruthless and to, steal and that kind. That's not tough love. Tough love may allow you, however, to call somebody out and to try to deal with, the darkness. Because when we shine the light in the darkness, only then will we see the cockroaches and the dirt and whatnot that we have to clean. And once we clean those, dust bunnies and whatnot, only then will we actually start to see what we want to see in the world, what we really need to go back to, or if, in a sense, we have never been there, so we have to go forward to. And I see that as possibly something that's going to go beyond our lifetimes and affect my children, my children's children, and so on.
Yes, I completely agree. And it was something that I was having a struggle with. And I know a few of my friends were having struggles with it as well. And I'm glad I was able to overcome it. But you start to feel the empathy inside of you, and you start to place yourself in the victim of whatever circumstance that you're researching, and it's hard for you to research it, but you've got to make that disconnection. It's very, very important to make that disconnection so you can shine the light into the darkness. But Cherie, did you pull up that article from National Geographic's 2010? And I think we're going to wrap up the show a little bit early this evening.
Really?
Yeah. I don't blame you.
Yeah. I've worked so hard this week that
I
need a little break.
He has been working really hard, you guys.
But tell us about that National Geographic's article real quick.
Sure, I'll just break it down for you. The National Geographic said back in 2010, October 27th, if you want to look that up, it was a University of Miami professor named Andriansky who said it's theoretically possible, though extremely difficult, to create a hybrid rabies influenza virus using modern genetic engineering techniques. Sure, I could imagine a scenario where you mix rabies with a flu virus to get airborne transmission, a measles virus to get personality changes, the encephalitis virus to cook your brain with fever and thus increase aggression even further, and throw in the Ebola virus to cause you to bleed from your guts, and combine all these things and you'll get something like a zombie virus. But nature doesn't allow all these things to happen at the same time. You'd most likely get a dead virus. Well, that's all well and good if these viruses that they're trying to cook up obviously don't, if they die, it's great. But what if they don't? What if they can create a situation where it does survive? Let's say they put it in some bath salts in pockets around the country, wait for people to go completely nuts with it, and then say, oh, there's been an outbreak. We've got your vaccines ready for you.
It's a scary time we're living in. I mean, I never, ever, ever thought that we would be here talking about zombies and people killing each other in this fashion and zombie viruses being manufactured. I never thought.
Well, I'm a little skeptical of it, guys. I think there are people that are just sick and have these sorts of episodes. And I'm skeptical in general when the CDC is telling us about a zombie apocalypse.
Isn't it
seems a bit contrived, and it seems a bit like they're really starting to just amplify the hype behind this because it is such a gross, compelling story.
Well, not only that, but did you read the article from back in 2011? I've got it right here. I've been taking notes all day. Okay, January 12th, 2012, a woman injected herself with bath salts. Guess what she got? Flesh-eating bacteria. That's interesting to me.
Is this the lady in Georgia?
No, it's a different lady.
Okay, there is a lady in Georgia, and she has a deadly flesh-eating virus as well. These flesh-eating viruses, although very, very rare, they do exist.
Well, they do exist, but it's very interesting that they're blaming this cannibal attack on bath salts, while at the same time, people that inject themselves with bath salts are getting flesh-eating viruses.
Yeah, that's compelling. Originally, they said it was a new form of LSD. Did you guys hear that?
Right. A new form of LSD, and then the bath salts. And it's funny because there was a zombie movie. I don't remember which one, but that's exactly what they blamed the first few attacks on. Was drugs.
Psychedelics, yeah.
Yeah, and in that movie, Altered States, have you guys seen that? It's probably been a while. It was released in the late 80s, and it was based on one of the premier psychedelic researchers at the time, and they showed this scene where he would go in the isolation tank and trip balls, and he would actually devolve and turn into not a zombie, but a devolved human, what do they call those? A Neanderthal, perhaps. And he would go around and he'd eat a bunch of people and just crazy stuff. And I mean, perhaps that's a bit of predictive programming for any of those who have seen Altered States and know what I'm talking about.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I was just commenting a couple of months ago that there were all these zombie movies on TV and all. I mean, it just seemed to be on every channel. It wasn't Halloween. It wasn't any time like that. And I was just kind of joking, maybe they're preparing people for a zombie apocalypse. Not saying that there will be a zombie apocalypse, just saying it's kind of strange now that all of a sudden here we go. Now, the other line of thought that I had on this situation is, does this kind of stuff happen on a regular basis, but we just don't hear about it? And if that's the case, if this kind of stuff really does happen pretty regularly, then why did the mainstream media decide now to put it in the public's face? What is the plan behind that?
What do you mean, what kind of stuff? Somebody eating somebody's
cannibalism?
face off?
Yeah, cannibalism.
Well, I don't know that it happens more often, but it happens, and when it does happen, the media is pretty quick to jump on it. Look at the story of the Brazilian cannibalism. That one got a bit of hype.
Well, all of this, I mean, yeah, the hype makes sense if you understand that the mainstream media is all a bunch of paid whores for the establishment, and they will put everything in your face that they think will distract you from the fact that Bilderberg just started meeting today.
Who?
That's a good point. That's a good point. I don't know why my mind didn't make that connection, but yes.
However, though, what would explain the rashes at those schools, at the airport, the doctor that got pulled over and he was carrying an unidentified vial of liquid and was very violent and hurt himself? Then also the hazmat release over at the Institute of Genomic Biology at the University of Illinois.
Yeah, but this kind of stuff does happen a lot.
Yeah, but not at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, devil's advocate. I'm just saying.
And that's what I'm doing as well.
They're not above pulling different strings at the same time. Just because they're pulling on one string doesn't mean they're pulling on the other one too.
This is true.
So, I mean, these people are puppet masters, they've got control over all the little strings. So, this is interesting, and I'm hoping to God that it doesn't, this kind of activity doesn't spread any further. But even if it does, we'll still be here. And I know that you will still be doing your show till the bitter end.
Well, you know what's interesting is that this whole zombie attack in Florida. Okay, first of all, there were so many inconsistencies with the story that it's unbelievable. Like we just mentioned, first it was LSD, then it was bath salts. And then they supposedly have the interview with this guy's ex-girlfriend or ex-wife, and she's hiding in her apartment. She doesn't want her face shown. She's talking through a door and talking about how violent this guy was and how crazy this guy was and how, this was to be expected with his behavior. And then the very same news outlet switches. I mean, they're talking out of both ends of their mouths here. It switches to talking about his arrest 4 years ago for marijuana. That's not a violent crime. And even the judge said that he served no threat to anybody out there during his bail sentence, and they even played his bail sentence on the media coverage, and they determined that he wasn't violent whatsoever. And they were saying, oh, well, even the judge couldn't see something like this coming. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Is he a violent psychopath who's going to bite somebody's face off or not?
Well, Chris, let me play devil's advocate for a moment, though, and say this. We have to find it in ourselves. And this might sound crazy, but we have to find it in ourselves, that sort of behavior, and see it in ourselves, and see the potential of that coming from ourselves. And once we do that, that's gonna protect you, because it's gonna, set those boundaries for you so that you don't go there. But to be honest, Chris, there's moments in my life where I'm so frustrated for whatever reason that I feel that rage. We all have that, I think. Maybe it's just me. But I see the potentiality of me being able to put my hand through the wall and have superhuman, type experiences. And I don't go there. And I don't like to ever unleash that.
We are definitely all capable of that. I mean, just take the countless examples of mothers' babies who are trapped under a car in some kind of situation like that, and they are able to conjure up this superhuman power to lift the car up and save their baby. So we are all capable of that.
Right, that's a good example.
Yes, we're not.
And then it goes the other way too. People are capable of losing it and raging in a way in which it's no good. We've all had that happen. We've all gotten in a fight with our girlfriend or parents or whoever and had that happen.
But maybe it's the consciousness shift affecting people just differently, because I've never been happier. But, Joe Blow down the street might be perceiving this energy shift as a bad thing.
That's a very good point. But I hate to go back to old theories and stuff that we've pretty much disproven for lack of a better understanding. But let's talk about Nibiru for a second. Okay, the Egyptians documented Nibiru coming back, and they documented a horrible catastrophe. I was actually listening to Bob Dean recently, and Bob Dean said, well, Nibiru's come and gone. And that's why we're seeing a decline in Earth changes as opposed to a rise that we would expect. And the reason we didn't get hit by catastrophe this time is because Nibiru only causes catastrophe when the Earth and Nibiru is on both sides, on the same side of the sun. If it passes by and it's on opposite ends of the sun, then we only get a few earthquakes and things like that. However, the Egyptians documented zombie attacks back then. Weren't you telling me about a city where all of the people were buried inside of concrete tombs, and they were also buried decapitated?
Yes, and they have that on the Narmer palette, I believe. And some scholars like to say, oh, well, that just means that they've taken the power away from their enemies. But I'm sorry, you've got a bunch of bodies piled up with their heads missing.
Right.
You know? So
then my mind goes to Lucas's research, and Lucas said that we could possibly see a zombie apocalypse as a result of Nibiru because of the components, the lead components, or I don't remember what type of chemical he said Nibiru is full of, but it can actually cause the brain to malfunction and go into a zombie-like state as a result of it. Now, when we put all of these theories, and I want to stress over and over again, these are all theories, and it's not necessarily anything that I believe, but when we put all of this together, what do we get? If Nibiru did pass by on the opposite end of the sun, it's come and gone, and the Earth changes were actually a result of it, then would it be unlikely that people's brains could have been affected as a result of that? Something to speculate on, definitely. But then again, we do have evidence that they're experimenting with zombie viruses, too.
So it could just be a self-fulfilling prophecy, really.
Yeah.
When you boil it all down, because we know that University of Texas professor even said, we can't wait for Ebola to come and wipe out most of the planet. So yeah, you do have people that think that way, you know, and there were like 1,000 kids there all just, you know, applauding when he said that. He got like a 5-minute long standing ovation when he said that. And so, yeah, you got to understand that when you have a certain number of people that really do want the end to come, they just hate humanity in general. They think that we're stupid and useless, and you know, only the smartest should survive. And that 1 to 2% of people are running it for the rest of us. And it's not fair, but...
Well, think about this angle for a second, or this aspect, or whatever you want to call it. The absolute perfect bioweapon would be a zombie virus. And the reason for that is it will attack, it will infect, and then it will cause the infected to infect others. But not only that, anybody who's not infected by it can most definitely be killed by the other zombies that are running around.
I don't know if that works. Here's why. I don't know that viruses really are spread that way. You got to look at a lady named Janice Roberts. Hope I didn't mess that up. But she's got some compelling info about infectious viruses. I don't think it works quite like that, Chris. I don't think it can actually, you know, have that effect. It might work like that in the movies, but I'm not sure. And don't quote me on this, but like I said, I'm not sure, and we'll have to look into this. But I'm not sure that actually works.
You could be right.
What if there's a psycho-spiritual aspect to it, too? Because look at the nodding disease in Uganda. Before last week, I think it was it the Huffington Post? I think it was the Huffington Post or the New York Times, one of these big ones, basically went back on what they wrote about the nodding disease a few months ago when they said it turned children into zombies, made them violent, made them start fires, and try to kill their siblings. They retracted like 80% of that last week. I don't know why, but they did. And I have, you know, the before and after screenshots because I've been studying the nodding disease in Uganda for a while now. And it looks to me like children and good people, I'm sorry, I'm just going to lay it all out here. Children and people who are generally of a positive energy, who do get sick with whatever this is, they get zombie-like effects, but that aren't completely violent with others to the point where you're ripping somebody's face off and eating it. Or you get flesh-eating bacteria, that eats your leg. However, if you're an already evil, messed up person and you get a hold of this stuff, it will turn you into a zombie. And maybe it's something like that. Because I don't know. This is all
that's interesting.
Too coincidental to me.
Well, can I comment on that? I don't mean to interrupt, but
no, go ahead.
Real quick. When I watched this great talk at the Free Your Mind conference from a hypnosis guy, a hypnotist. That's the word I was looking for. From a hypnotist. And he said that you can hypnotize people, but you can't get them to do something under a state of hypnosis that they wouldn't already do.
Right.
I've heard that, yeah.
So there's a psycho-spiritual aspect to everything.
That's what that means to me. I don't know. It's quite compelling, But they can slowly. He talked about the slow mind control and the slow process of getting people to do something they wouldn't do, and that requires trauma, fear, and it takes a lot of work. And perhaps some people are just at their breaking point.
Well, I would be too if I didn't know that all of this was a sham, and I didn't know that I wasn't my body and that we are all really one being experiencing life individually. And if I didn't know all of that, I would be going crazy right now, because gas would be outrageously high. Everything would be the same as it is now, except I wouldn't know why and how to deal with it, how to address it, how to prepare. And I do. So I'm happy, I'm fulfilled, and I'm ready for the future. Bring it on. However, if I didn't know all that stuff, I would be going insane. I would. Because it would all seem so unreal at this point. You've got people throwing their intestines at police officers.
Right.
That took 2 cans of pepper spray, and finally, I think they had to shoot him.
Well, we didn't even talk about that. The guy in Miami was shot 6 times.
Yes.
There was another one that was hit by a taxi cab, and he just ran off like it was nothing.
And
these people are showing superhuman abilities, and it makes me wonder if this is a virus, how is it attacking the brain? I don't think that it's a Hollywoodized style attack, but what I think it does is it lowers you down to the reptilian state, and then it also gives you that extra ability that what if this was a virus that they were experimenting with to try to turn soldiers more aggressive and to be able to take bullets? That could have been the origins of it.
Well, the University of Miami isn't averse to experimenting with rabies and influenza viruses. Right. Come on. You don't say that unless you're already thinking about doing it or doing it. Because, I'm sorry, there's just too many of these elite that would literally kill for the chance to get a hold of this stuff. And so go ahead.
Yeah. Well, about the super soldier idea, Chris, we know that that's a concept, and declassified documents have shown us that they've worked on that.
Right,
right.
So.
Well, and that's how rabies works. Rabies is something that works at the neurotropic level, and there are several of these neurotropic viruses that I've been looking up lately that attack your nervous system. But in some people, it swells your brain up and you get psychotic. You start running a fever, you get psychotic. Hey, that sounds a lot like bath salts. I'm sorry, but it does. Are they putting something in these bath salts? Because apparently, out of all the tests they've done, they found a variety of different stuff in it. And at different dosages, you have no idea what you're getting when you do this stuff.
Well, this is the problem that we have with drug prohibition, is that people try to find legal ways to get high. And so the good drugs that are known, tested, and tried and people have been using for 50 years, 100 years, they're illegal, so people create these substitutes for them. And that's what's killing people. K2, these bath salts, the adulterants that they've created ecstasy out of.
Yep.
Like I've said before, in the rave scene, when it was pure MDMA, everything was fine. Once they banned sassafras and put it on the DEA watch list, then the manufacturers started looking for other ways to create this. And then you started having the deaths at the raves.
Yeah,
it wasn't before, it was after.
The piperazine is so dangerous for people's brains that's why all the kids started collapsing and having cooked brains. Because of the piperazine.
Right, and then they called it ecstasy, when it's really not ecstasy.
That is, I hate how the media works like that. Don't you? They're so selective in the information that they move it around like pieces on a chessboard while you're not looking. And then you turn around and you're like, hey, did you just move those pieces? No. They were there before. You know, you have to keep your eye on these people all the time to make sure they don't get away with stuff.
Definitely. Well, Bob, anything left on your mind?
Not
really.
Well, there's a whole lot left, but nothing that I want to share at the moment.
Right. I hear you. We had a great interview with Jim Mars.
Yeah, that was
I heard
fun.
some of that.
Yeah, when we have the stellar guests on the first hour, then the rest of the time is just kind of like, you know. So we got to save it next time.
Yeah.
You can't just blow our load right in the beginning.
No.
Chris.
Anything you want to wrap it up with, Sheree?
Not really. Just love each other.
Yes, absolutely. And we're going to cut it short, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you very much for tuning in. Tomorrow night, jam-packed show. Tonight, it was a jam-packed show in the first hour. Second hour was great with Shep of the IntelHub joining us for a few minutes in the beginning. And Bob Tuskin, of course, bobtuskin.com. And anything coming up on the show, Bob?
Well, next week I have a baby special, and that'll be on June 6th. All day on June 6th, I'll be broadcasting on trauma-based hospital births and natural births. I'll have Janice Barcelow for a 90-minute exclusive podcast that I'm going to send out commercial-free. And then on my regular broadcast, I will have Lennon Honor, who is great. You guys ought to check him out. Freeman turned me on to his work. And we'll be talking about fatherhood and natural birth and all sorts of good stuff with him. He's a father of 6 children, and they're all blessed to have natural births, many of them unassisted. So I'm really excited about that. As you know, that has a lot of personal significance.
Congratulations, Bob.
And his registry for the baby is at Amazon?
Yeah, they can just go type in Bob Tuskin on baby registries there. I'm gonna try to release it with the show so people, have something to go with it.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Very good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, kiss the one you love right now, because you never know when the last time is going to be. We'll see you every Friday and Saturday right here on Truth Frequency. Much, much more to come. Special thanks to Jim Mars, Shep of the IntelHub, Bob Tuskin, and of course my lovely chipmunk twin flame and co-host Sheree. We love you guys.
We're the renegades, castaways, outlaws to the game like Thomas Paine was. They masquerade us. Who's to blame us? Now set to explode like a hand grenade does. No peace and cease the police to show peace. Unleash beef, no release peace. Underneath the beast that lies dormant, forced to use force, taught to use caution. Tossed to the ground, the subliminal blinded. Like KRS-One, cause I'm criminal minded. I run with soldiers amongst the vultures. Now you're under control, cause you do what they told you. The front lines now.